Ever heard that expression? Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, it's true, right? Big things take time. And the group we're looking at today, they seem to get that.
Yeah, they really do.
The Christian Faith Ministry, CFM, they've got these, well, pretty ambitious plans for growth.
Definitely ambitious. We're talking about the Free State and Lesotho Synod of the Uniting Reformed Church in Southern Africa, by the way, in case anyone's keeping score at home. But yeah, this CFM plan, it's got some serious legs on it.
And what's wild is how much groundwork they've already laid. I mean, we're talking over 2 decades of, well, I guess you could call it prep work.
It's true. Think about it. The CFM, they were founded way back in 2003. But get this, their very first branch in this region didn't launch until 2017.
Okay, so 14 years. So what were they doing all that time besides, obviously planning? But still, 14 years, that's like, what, an entire childhood spent getting ready?
It definitely says something about their approach, right? I mean, this isn't some fly-by-night operation. They're not rushing in. They're methodical, deliberate even. It's about building a foundation, something that lasts.
Makes sense, especially when you see how much emphasis they put on structure. We're talking about a whole hierarchical system they're setting up.
Oh yeah, they've got big plans, but we'll get into all that. But first, we've got to do a little crash course. Set the stage. We're talking about a specific branch of a specific church in a specific region of South Africa.
Right, because not everyone listening is, a theologian. So break it down for us. What's the deal with this whole URCSA thing?
Okay, so URCSA, that stands for the Uniting Reformed Church in Southern Africa. It's a big deal. Major Protestant denomination, deep roots in South Africa. And their history, let's just say it's intertwined with, South Africa's own complicated past.
Right, apartheid, all of that.
Exactly. Now, a synod, think of that like a regional division within the URCSA, kind of like how some churches have dioceses. And the Free State and Lesotho Synod, that covers a huge chunk of Central South Africa.
Got it. So, big picture, you've got the URCSA, then you've got these different synods responsible for different areas. And it's within this one specific synod, the Free State and Lesotho one, that the CFM is trying to, leave their mark.
You got it. And to figure out their game plan, we got to look at their core documents. They actually gave us their onboarding plan. It's got their vision statement, their mission, their values, the whole shebang.
It's like before you build a house, you need a blueprint.
All right.
So this is their blueprint.
Exactly. It shows what they're all about. And they're serious about it. This isn't just like corporate jargon. It's the foundation for everything they're doing.
Okay, so no more stalling. What's the big idea? What do they want?
At their core, CFM, they want to bring the kingdom of God to the people. That's their big vision statement.
Okay, that's pretty broad. But their mission statement, that's got to be a little more concrete, right?
Yeah. You know it. They get into fighting against evil by pursuing Christian life and introducing folks to God through Christ.
Fighting against evil. That has a nice ring to it. Got me picturing some epic battles here. But I'm guessing they're not talking about, literal sword fights, right?
Probably not. Although, who knows, maybe they've got a budget for battle axes we haven't seen. But in all seriousness, it's about making a difference, right? Putting your faith into action.
So, less about words, more about action.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. But what kind of action are we talking about? That's where their values come in, right? This is how they define that action.
100%. CFM, they're all about being ministry-centric, big on integrity, and, of course, respect. Those are their big 3, value-wise.
Well, those are good values. Hard to argue with those. But ministry-centric, break that down for me. Does that just mean, focusing on ministry?
It's about service, right? Giving back to the community, walking the walk. It's that whole idea of bringing the kingdom of God to the people. They're not just about bringing people into the church. It's about going out there and making a difference in the world.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Action speaks louder than words. And what about integrity? I'm guessing that's about being, upfront and honest in everything they do.
Exactly. Transparency, accountability, especially these days, with all the stuff that's happened. People need to be able to trust an organization, especially a religious one.
For sure. Can't argue with that. And last but not least, respect. What's interesting is they actually call out embracing everyone. Doesn't matter your race, your gender, your age. And they even mentioned the Belhar Confession, which, if I'm remembering right, that's a pretty significant document in South African church history.
You remember correctly. The Belhar Confession, it came about in 1986. Right in the thick of apartheid. It basically condemned apartheid as a sin, stated straight up that all believers are united no matter their race or social standing. So for the CFM to bring that up, especially in an area with a past like the Free State and Lesotho, it's a powerful statement.
It's like they're saying, look, we don't just tolerate everyone, we welcome everyone,
Yeah.
and they mean it.
Exactly, and that ties right back into how they're trying to grow. They're not looking for a certain type of person. If you connect with their message, if you want to be a part of something bigger than yourself, they're like, come on in.
That's a message that resonates. I mean, so many people today, they're looking for meaning, for purpose. They want to belong somewhere.
No doubt. But good intentions, they only get you so far. To actually make it happen, to turn that vision into a reality, that's where their onboarding plan comes in. And let me tell you, it is detailed.
This is where we get into the nitty-gritty, the how-to manual for bringing people into the fold.
Think of it like their blueprint for building Rome, brick by metaphorical brick.
And judging by this plan, they put a lot of thought into each and every brick. So no more teasing. What's step one? How do you even begin to build something this big?
All right, so phase one, this is all about getting the word out, building momentum. Think of it like creating a buzz. They call it the exposure and recruitment phase. And they're not wasting any time. It's happening right out of the gate, first quarter of their year.
So like social media blitzes, big events, maybe even some good old-fashioned door knocking.
You got it. They're pulling out all the stops to get people's attention. It's about generating excitement, making people feel like something new is happening. Like, hey, are you in or are you out?
Build move.
Yeah.
Going all in on recruitment right away. But then again, you can't exactly build a movement without people, right?
Exactly. You need that energy, that initial spark. They're looking for people who are all in, ready to get to work. And not just anyone. They want people who are passionate, people who really believe in what they're doing.
Because passion, that's contagious, right? You get enough people fired up, that energy, it spreads.
100%. And here's a key detail. CFM, they want their members to be their ambassadors. They're encouraging them to invite their friends, their families, everyone. This isn't just some top-down thing. It's about building a grassroots movement.
Smart. Tap into that power of personal connections. Word of mouth, that's powerful stuff. But let's be real, social media is great for getting the word out, but at some point, they're going to have to work with the higher-ups in the church, right?
You know it. And that is where phase two comes in, engaging church councils. And this is where things get, well, a little more delicate.
Because it's one thing to get people excited about a new idea. It's another thing entirely to get the folks in charge on board, especially in a more traditional setting like a church.
Oh, absolutely. CFM, they need the church councils on their side. Those councils, they're basically the regional governing bodies. Each presbytery has one.
Okay, time for another crash course. What's a presbytery again? Just for those of us who, don't have a degree in church organizational structure.
So imagine a presbytery as a group of churches, all in a specific area. They work together to make decisions, share resources, offer support, that kind of thing. Think of it like a level between the local church and that big synod we talked about.
Got it. So CFM isn't just trying to win over individual congregations. They're trying to get these regional bosses, these presbyteries, on their team. That's a whole different ballgame.
It is. They're not just rallying the troops anymore. This is diplomacy time, relationship building. They need to prove that they're not a threat. If anything, they want to show how CFM can help the church as a whole.
It's like they're saying, hey, we succeed, you succeed. A real team effort.
Exactly. And they're not just relying on good vibes and charisma. They've got a whole plan for how to approach these church councils. Presentations, Q&A sessions, addressing concerns, head on the works.
Because honesty builds trust, right? They lay it all out there, their goals, how they operate. That goes a long way, especially in an environment like this.
You said it. And they're making it crystal clear. Their values line up with the URCSA's values. They're not trying to rock the boat. They just want to breathe new life into the church's mission.
It's a tough needle to thread, trying to be, innovative and respectful at the same time. Ambitious, but not like they're trying to stage a coup.
Tell me about it. But finding that balance, that's make or break for them.
So let's say CFM gets the green light, everyone's on board. What happens next? Things start happening for real then, right?
That's right. This is where we move from the planning stage to the doing stage. They call this phase 3 launching local branches, and it's all about putting those plans into action.
No more hypotheticals, it's go time. And this is where it gets interesting, right? Workshops, electing leaders. They even have this thing called a robbing ceremony? Sounds kind of intense for a church group.
I know. What even is a robing ceremony? My mind went a little wild, picturing special robes, maybe a whole initiation ritual.
Yeah, are we talking Hogwarts level robes here? Or something a little more down to earth?
We can only speculate. But hey, maybe it's a new member thing. They get a stole or a pin, something to show they're officially CFM. It'd be quite a visual, a whole group of new members getting robed at once. Imagine that.
Talk about a photo op. But seriously, it creates a moment, right? You're not just joining a group. It's like you're becoming part of something bigger.
Exactly. And think about the logistics here. They've got workshops planned, probably on leadership skills, conflict resolution, how to do outreach. It's about giving these new branches the tools they'll need.
So it's not all ceremony and symbolism. There's real practical stuff happening too. Makes sense though. Set them up for success, right?
Right. And they've got a big goal too, launching at least 5 branches PER presbytery. We're talking 11 presbyteries total, so it's a lot of branches.
Let me get my calculator out. Carry the one. That's 55 branches. They're not messing around. That's a lot of robbing ceremonies and a lot of potential for things to, go off the rails if they're not careful.
Very true. And that brings us to the money part, which honestly is one of the most interesting things about this whole plan, each branch. They're shooting for our 10,000 tower in revenue annually.
Okay, now we're talking real numbers. If they actually pull that off across all 55 branches, we're talking serious money here. Where's it all coming from? Are we talking membership fees, fundraising dinners, a bake sale?
$1 million question, right. And, well, the plan is a little vague on that point. They mentioned financial contributions, but it doesn't say if that's like voluntary donations or if everyone's got to pay dues.
Yeah, that's something you'd want to know up front, right? If you're thinking about joining, how much is this going to cost me? Are there different levels of membership, maybe?
Totally. And it's something to keep an eye on as we learn more. Transparency, that's key, especially when it comes to money, right?
Especially when you're talking about this much money.
Yeah.
Because it's not just going to sit there. It's got to be used for something, right?
Of course. Workshops cost money. Supporting those local branches, and then there's their whole plan for, well, what comes next to you? That's got to be funded somehow.
Right, because they're not just trying to create a bunch of separate groups. It's all got to connect, work together, right?
Exactly. Phase 4 is all about that presbytery and regional structure. They're thinking big picture, long term. They get it, these branches. They need support. They need a sense of community to really thrive.
Okay, but how do you actually do that? Launching 55 branches is one thing, but keeping them all on the same page, that's a whole other challenge.
And that's where that hierarchical structure we talked about comes in. Remember the presbyteries, those regional groups. Well, CFM, they want to be a part of that level of organization.
So like a mini CFM within each presbytery. Yeah. A home base where the branches can come together, share resources, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And to make sure everyone's on the same page, they've also got this regional governance system. So each presbytery sends delegates to a big regional synod. It meets every 4 years, and they hash out the big issues.
It's like their own little mini church government. Local branches, regional presbyteries, and then this big synod overseeing it all. That way, everyone gets a voice, right? Even the smallest branches.
Right. But it's not just about everyone having their say. It's about making sure everyone's working together, too. That's where their regional executive committee comes in. They're like the management team, keeping things running day to day.
So Big Synod is like setting the overall direction, and this committee is more like making sure the trains run on time.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
But it does bring up an interesting point. This whole balance between like having rules and giving people freedom, centralized authority, versus local control. CFM's going to have to figure out how to make that work.
Because too much control from the top down, that can stifle people, make them feel like cogs in a machine. But too much freedom and things can get, well, messy. Branches going rogue, that kind of thing.
For sure. It's a delicate dance. And it'll be interesting to see how they handle it, especially as they grow. Because, well, things rarely go exactly according to plan, right?
Truth. And speaking of things that are, complicated, we haven't even touched on the whole Belhar confession thing. How are they actually going to live that out? Especially in a place with a history like this one.
That's the real question, isn't it? And I'm curious to see how they approach it. Because saying you're all about inclusion is one thing. Actually creating that kind of community, that's a whole other ballgame.
It's like they're building this, this whole machine of faith. You've got all the different parts, the branches, the presbyteries, the synod, all these committees, and they're all supposed to work together, perfectly in sync.
Well, that's the idea anyway. It's definitely a very structured approach. But to their credit, they seem to get that too much structure can be a bad thing. They keep talking about how important local autonomy is. Each branch needs the freedom to, do its own thing based on what its community needs.
Right, because a church in, say, a rural farming town Their needs are going to be different than a church in, I don't know, downtown Lesotho.
Exactly. So it's going to be a balancing act, right? How much freedom do you give the branches, and how much do you say, okay, hold on, everyone needs to be on the same page here?
Easier said than done, right? Trying to keep everyone happy. It's a recipe for a headache. But speaking of complicated, remember that whole Belhar confession thing? We talked about how important that is to them, this idea of being inclusive, but how's that actually going to work on the ground, especially in a place with a history like this?
That is the million-dollar question, and I'm really curious to see how they handle it, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, everyone's welcome here, but actually making that happen, creating a space where everyone feels truly welcome, safe, valued, that's tough.
The Belhar Confession, it's like this is what we believe, but CFM, they have to figure out the how. How do we actually live this out every day?
Exactly, and that's where their values come in, right? Being ministry-centric, acting with integrity, because those words, they have to mean something. They have to be reflected in what they do, how they treat people, the whole 9 yards.
So it's not enough to just like open the doors and say, come on in, everyone. They have to actually work to make things better.
Yeah.
Right? Address the issues that are driving inequality, all of that.
100%. They're talking about being a force for social change. And that's a tall order, even for a church.
Yeah.
But it's also what makes them so interesting, right? They're not shying away from the tough stuff.
It's like they're saying, we don't have all the answers, but we're going to try. Right? We're going to listen. We're going to work together, and hopefully we'll make a difference.
And honestly, in today's world, that message, it's powerful. We're so divided, and here's this group talking about unity, about hope. It's refreshing.
And makes you think maybe they're onto something. And, you know, it's bigger than just this one group, this one place. It's a good reminder for all of us. What do we believe in? And what are we doing to make it a reality?
Right. It's about action. It's about putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. And that's maybe the biggest takeaway from all of this. Change, it is possible. Even small changes, they can have a ripple effect.
So here we are, end of our deep dive. And honestly, I'm feeling, I don't know, cautiously optimistic. CFM, they've got their work cut out for them, but there's a real sense of purpose there. They believe in what they're doing.
And isn't that what we're all looking for? Something to believe in, a reason to hope that things can get better.
I think so.